How would you react if your partner had lunch with someone of the opposite sex and didn't make it clear from the beginning? What seemed like an innocent steakhouse lunch turned into a spark that reignited years of buried doubts. When trust comes face to face with a history of betrayal, is love still strong enough to hold a long-term marriage together? The story below is not just a test of trust, but a reminder of how fragile even the strongest relationships can be. And the most surprising part is how those involved chose to confront, understand, and overcome it all. It was a Friday afternoon when she came home with leftovers and casually mentioned they were from lunch with a friend. Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with him. The words seemed harmless, but they struck a chord deep within, not because he was paranoid, but because the lunch hadn't been mentioned beforehand. And in a marriage that had lasted over a decade, where honesty and openness were cornerstones, the vague phrase, "a friend," felt like a red flag. When he gently asked for more details, she explained, the friend was a man, 15 years older, recently divorced, someone she knew from the gym, the one she went to religiously at 5 in the morning. Not a complete stranger, but not exactly an old friend or longtime colleague either. Not someone you'd normally have lunch with alone unless there was a level of comfort, or something more. The fact that she hadn't clarified this from the beginning made him feel like he was on the outside of a circle he thought they both shared. It triggered a fear he hadn't felt in years, the same one left behind by past betrayals. From a simple lunch, everything suddenly felt off, because in love, suspicion doesn't always come from obvious wrongdoing. Sometimes it grows from the silence where clarity should have been. He didn't accuse her, didn't raise his voice, but the unease lingered. That one small omission, intentional or not, had crossed a line he believed should never be blurred in a marriage. Now the question wasn't just, did she do something wrong? It was, have the boundaries of trust between us shifted even just a little from that moment? A lunch that should have meant nothing suddenly held the weight of everything and became the spark that could ignite something far more dangerous in a relationship that had already weathered its share of storms. No one enters a new relationship with a completely clean emotional slate. We all carry scars, some visible, some buried deep, from past loves and past wounds. For the husband in this story, those scars lie in a particularly tender place, trust. He had been betrayed more than once before, and those betrayals left behind a quiet unease, a kind of emotional alarm system ready to go off at the first sign of ambiguity. So when his wife mentioned having lunch with another man, even if the situation was entirely innocent, he couldn't brush it off so easily. His past hurt had made him sensitive to anything that could be perceived as unclear or vaguely concealed. For others, a casual lunch with a male friend might mean nothing. But for him, it was a setting that could easily awaken memories he had fought hard to bury. And in those moments, logic often takes a back seat. Emotion, especially the fear of loss, takes the wheel. He didn't blame her for having a gym acquaintance. He didn't lash out when she shared the truth. But what lingered was the feeling of being left outside the boundaries of trust, a feeling that ran deeper than the lunch itself. He had once loved fully, trusted deeply, and been betrayed brutally. Since then, vagueness had become his greatest enemy, especially in marriage, where clarity and honesty are sacred. But looking deeper, we see that he wasn't just battling with his wife. He was fighting with himself, with the past, with the shadows of those who had once lied to him, and with the overwhelming fear that what he held dear could vanish in a single moment of blurred honesty. And yet there's something admirable in the way he handled it. He didn't let the past hijack the present. Instead, he chose conversation over confrontation. This showed emotional maturity, a willingness to stay grounded even when old pain tried to pull him under. It showed that no matter how heavy the past, he still longed to preserve something healthy, something real, a relationship where trust, though shaken, could be rebuilt slowly, piece by piece. In the end, this story reveals a simple but profound truth. Those who've been hurt before don't need perfect love. They just need someone who understands them enough to not make them feel like they have to stay on guard forever. After the cloud of suspicion stirred up by the mysterious lunch, the husband made a choice that not everyone in his position would be calm enough to make. He sat down and listened to his wife. No yelling, no accusations, just a conversation, a deliberate, gentle act that spoke volumes. It showed that despite the wounds of the past, he still wanted to understand her, to trust her, to hold on to the connection they'd built over the years. And in that conversation, she told him everything. She assured him that there was nothing inappropriate between her and the man from the gym. They were merely casual acquaintances, had exchanged small talk over the past 2 years, mostly about food, fitness, light everyday things. She hadn't been evasive, nor did she try to hide anything when he asked. The only misstep, and she admitted this, was forgetting to mention the lunch beforehand, and her vague use of the term, a friend. And then an important detail surfaced. She hadn't deliberately kept it a secret. She had simply forgotten. And the moment she said that, something clicked. He knew that forgetfulness was part of her nature, a scatterbrained charm he'd long accepted. It didn't erase the unease he'd felt, but it reframed it. The lunch wasn't a betrayal, just a small crack in their communication. In her eyes, in her words, he saw genuine remorse. She didn't defend herself or get defensive. She simply apologized, sincerely from the heart, for making him worry. That honesty in that single moment became a bridge that helped him step back from the shadows of his past and return to the present, where love, trust, and the desire to weather storms together still lived. Through that quiet, honest exchange, they both realized something. The real issue wasn't the lunch. It was the space that had grown between them, a silence, a gap in communication. And once that space was filled with truth and listening, even the old fears, the ones that had haunted him for years, began to lose their power. After their honest and emotionally charged conversation, the husband felt a weight begin to lift. The heavy doubt that had once clouded his heart was slowly replaced by something gentler. The quiet reassurance found in his wife's eyes, her voice, and her sincerity. In those moments, he didn't just rediscover a part of the trust that had been shaken. He also found himself looking back at the long road they had walked together over the past decade and more. And despite the bumps and missteps along the way, one truth stood firm in his heart. The good times have always outweighed the hard ones. That's not something everyone can say after 14 years together. In a world where people often walk away at the first sign of trouble, the fact that they had both chosen, time and again, to stay, to hold hands through the turbulence, was a quiet testament to the depth of their love. Yes, they had fought. Yes, they had hurt. Yes, they had doubted. But what kept them standing through it all was the choice, however difficult, to keep believing in each other, even when the path grew unclear. Their story is a reminder that marriage is not a picture-perfect journey. It's more like a long, winding climb filled with twists, steep slopes, and sometimes even fog that hides the way forward. But if both people are willing to keep moving, to keep holding on, then the summit, the moments of joy and deep connection, will always lie just beyond the struggle. The husband's willingness to open his heart and the wife's courage to speak her truth revealed something essential. There was still a strong foundation between them, one built on respect, compassion, and real enduring love. Theirs wasn't the flawless kind of relationship you see in movies. It was something far more valuable, a living, breathing bond, still learning, still growing, still trying. And maybe, just maybe, that unexpected lunch, the one that almost pushed them apart, had done the opposite. It became a moment to pause, to reflect, to reconnect, to remember that sometimes it's the bumps in the road that remind us just how far we've come and how much we still want to go together. When a relationship has weathered enough storms, people often come to realize that what saves a marriage isn't perfection. It's the ability to sit down together when everything feels like it's fallen apart. After the suspicion sparked by that unexpected lunch, the couple in this story made the wisest choice they could. They talked honestly, openly. There was no shouting, no blame, just sincere words from both sides. The husband allowed himself to be vulnerable, sharing his fear of betrayal, a fear not new but still lingering like an old scar that never fully healed. The wife didn't deflect or become defensive. Instead, she acknowledged her mistake, forgetting to clearly explain the lunch. A seemingly small oversight, but one that hit the most sensitive part of her husband's heart. Through that conversation, the truth came to light, and so did empathy. She reassured him that the lunch had been entirely innocent, with no hidden intentions. And she apologized earnestly for how her forgetfulness had unintentionally hurt him. Hearing her out, the husband no longer carried the same burden of anxiety. The fear that had once gripped him, the fear of betrayal, began to loosen its hold. What's most admirable is that they didn't allow this misunderstanding to become a spark that burned down everything they had built together over the past 14 years. Instead, they transformed doubt into a moment of deeper connection, a reminder that in marriage, timely and heartfelt communication can heal in ways no gift ever could. The ending of their story wasn't a fairy tale, happily ever after, but something far more real and meaningful, a portrait of love that still lingers, trust that is being restored, and most importantly, two people who still choose to walk this road together. And sometimes that simple act of choosing each other again and again is the most romantic thing marriage can offer.